I only use my, okay. Well, hi, everybody. You want me to just start, Angela?
Yeah, hop right in. And now
Yeah.
we all know each other, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I'm going to talk about today is what are essentially the legal ramifications of turning 18 and 22, but then also looking at planning beyond 22 or beyond 18, depending on where your child's abilities are. And what this meeting hopefully will do is sort of help you map out the game plan for your child with a disability as they age into adulthood. A lot of what we cover actually is true for any of your children, that they don't have to have a disability, because a lot of this is the legal part. But then I'm also going to get into about financial planning and some of those other issues that surround someone who's not going to be able to make enough money to live probably in the manner they're accustomed because of their disability. So I'm going to explore and talk about those areas as well. I'm still moving around this screen. So I'm going to talk about becoming a legal adult, what that means. We'll talk about guardianships as well as alternatives to guardianships. We'll talk about healthcare and insurance, education and employment. We're going to look at housing and living arrangements, community and social life, then financial planning. And then I'm also going to talk about the Department of Developmental Services and what that means. And as usual, if you have any questions, if you want to just stop me and ask the question, I think it would be helpful for me as well as for everybody else who's either on this call now or is going to be watching it later on video. Janet, if you have a question, you're on mute.
No, sorry. My son just came home.
Oh, okay. I think you already know about me because you were here last time. I have some experience mainly because my oldest son has Down syndrome, and I've been around this, and he's now 38, so I've been 20 years experience with adulthood at this point. So I know a few things from experience as well as from my legal career. The first thing, and this is the main point of the turning 18, is on that 18th birthday is a huge legal milestone for any person. It's at that point that they become a legal adult, that they have the ability to enter into contracts, that they're completely autonomous from their parents legally. So that means that if they have a medical appointment, that you can't talk to the doctors. That means if they want to leave, you don't have any control of them. Anything they're going to do, they are a legal adult. So that causes a major issue for individuals with disabilities that may have some difficulty making decisions, whether that's, whether it's a developmental disability, they're on the spectrum, or an intellectual disability. And just because they have a disability doesn't mean that they're not able to make decisions. And the question is, how do we support those people to make decisions in a way that's safe, as well as giving them the independence that they should have, that everybody really wants to have, that we've all had as we aged into adulthood. So anything, and I guess the way to think about this is, once they become adults, all your responsibilities as parents really disappear. The responsibilities and privileges of parenthood, that you don't have the right to make decisions for them anymore. You don't have the right in the education field. If they want to make a decision, they can make a decision. If they want to drop themselves from special education or whatever it is, they can make that decision without you. And you have no right to enter into that decision unless there's something that gives you the authority to jump in there. And I'll pause just for a second and see if anybody has any questions or comments.
I actually have a question, and this is a little bit out of bounds, so you may not have an answer. I know in Massachusetts, it becomes a little tricky with doctor's visits once your child actually turns 13. So how they, like, parents need consent to be in visits, to have access to on the online patient gateway stuff. I mean, obviously a child can hand over that's the online portal that we use here on Martha's Vineyard, but parents can ask for their kids' login, but there's issues around that. So do you know anything about that and how that would pertain to this?
Well, the only thing that I'm aware of is that the right for a young woman to get an abortion without parental consent, and what that looks like, that the young woman can go in front of a judge and get the judge to approve an abortion. So that's the only one that I'm aware of for a minor to make their own decisions.
Okay, thanks.
Angela, my kids, while they started sort of talking more directly to the kids when they turned 13, they didn't actually boot me off of Gateway until they turned 18. So
I got booted off the day Alyssa turned 13.
really, wow.
She had to give me permission.
Huh. So, and what's Gateway? Is that for the island? Is that what it is?
It's Mass
It's-
General's login.
Yeah, Mass General and
Oh.
Great Women's and Children's Hospital. It's
Yep,
like
yep.
all
Okay,
the-
I have that in myself now. Yeah, okay.
It might be a Mass General rule.
Maybe, maybe. And I guess it's
I
not
do know-
particularly relevant.
I do know, Angela, that when I was at the doctor's office here the other day with my daughter, who's just turned 18, we filled out a form that allowed me to access her gateway, her patient gateway account. She signed it in front of the receptionist. We gave it back to him, and I'm good to go now.
I'm curious if you have a child with a disability that, does not write, if that scenario would
That
happen.
one I know about too. So mine just automatically got flipped over by the pediatrician's office for my
So-
son.
Yeah. So I know that at Mass General, if nothing has been taken care of by the time of 18, Mass General gets very aggressive around, people with disabilities as they're turning 18. They send letters out to the family that says, look, once this kid turns 18, you're completely off, and there's nothing, unless you have the proper paperwork in place, you're off this, we're not going to contact you anymore. So it's all part of the same issue. Any other questions or comments? So the biggest thing, I think, when someone's turning 18 is the issue around a guardianship or something else. And that's a huge issue. It's an issue that I've been involved with on a research project the research project has been going for a number of years. Everything we're seeing in the research project, a lot of it is what I'm experiencing. Number one is that when a child with a disability, particularly like someone who's significantly impacted by autism or someone with an intellectual disability, the question comes, what do we do? What does that look like? And around DDS used to be very, very aggressive to say, look, you need to have a guardianship for this kid. A lot of times school districts and schools can be relatively aggressive to say you need a guardianship for this kid. One of my clients who's turning 18, who just had a physical disability, the hospitals got very aggressive and said, you need guardianship. A lot of that is misguided. And that a lot of times what they're doing is sort of default. I think they're just defaulting to guardianship. Why don't I just talk about the differences between guardianship? The alternatives of having a guardianship for a person with a disability is when they turn 18, instead of getting a guardianship, they could issue a power of attorney to their parents or one of their parents, and a healthcare proxy to their parents or one of their parents. That then cleans up any of those issues that are raised by DDS, by hospitals, by school districts. That takes care of it. So this grid you're looking at is the comparison between having a guardianship and having a power of attorney issued. The first thing is for, let me just describe the guardianship. The powers of attorney is just like you probably have issued powers of attorney yourself. All you do is fill out a document that says, I give the power of attorney to this particular person to act as my agent in my stead. And they can do, once you sign that, that person holding the power of attorney can go into your bank accounts. They can, they can actually buy houses in your name. They can mortgage. They can do anything that person could legally do can be done by the power of attorney. And it's a very simple thing. You just sign this document and you're good to go. Guardianship is very different, that there's court involvement. What happens with the court involvement is that the court requires, it's called a clinical team report around someone who is, when you're alleging an incapacity, like an intellectual disability, or someone on the spectrum who really needs support. The clinical team report is, I think it's a medical doctor, a psychologist, and a social worker who examines the child and then makes a determination whether guardianship is appropriate or not. There's another step too. I know that you have a lot of families who have kids on the spectrum. Sometimes kids on the spectrum may be taking a medication, psychotropic, or I don't even know what to call them, like risperidone, or what are those psychoactive drugs. Those kids need, in Massachusetts, it's called the Rogers Guardianship. The Rogers Guardianship allows the guardian to make decisions around giving the kid this kind of medication. Typically, if a kid is on that medication, they've been on that medication for a while, and it's really nothing new, but Massachusetts requires that guardianship go through a different process, an extra process. In that process, the kid who's turning 18 will also have their own lawyer as opposed to the parent's lawyer. And that lawyer then goes in representing the kid, making sure that everything's right and that they can go forward with this guardianship. But it does, so you have to file all those papers with the court for a guardianship. You have to file the petition, bond, and the clinical team report. Then you have to go before a judge, and then the judge will issue the order. But once the judge issues the order, what happens is that person, the person with a disability who turns 18, loses all those other legal rights that they had that I talked about turning 18. The parents then control everything for that person, controlling where they live, complete control over their, banking, everything that's happening, that the guardian controls that. I kind of went through a lot of this stuff. Sometimes the judge can actually limit the guardianship. My own experience as an attorney is I really haven't seen much of that. Typically, they'll get the clinical team report and they'll just act on the clinical team report. What we're seeing is, there's another thing too that happens at school, is that school, as part of the IEP process, when they turn 18, they're supposed to be talking about transfer of rights. And that's the transfer of rights from the kid to the parent, from the parent to the kid. And when they talk about that, and they sometimes talk about guardianship in that process, a lot of times our experience in this research project is for the people that are getting the guardianship, they don't even know that happened. They're in the room and it's not really drawn their attention to what's happening or what it means. So most people with disabilities that actually sit in the room when they do that transfer of rights, they're not even really aware it happened, which is part of what we're looking in the research project. Is we really need to draw attention to these kids when they're turning 18, that they know that this is happening, that they have some understanding of what happened. I come to this with my own baggage. I have on my own life experience. And it's what I'm seeing is that I think even the clinicians that are making the ruling about guardianships are not completely understanding disability either. That I think that you would, as parents, are in the best position to determine that. But the issue you need to think about, I think, is and what our research shows too, is that people under guardianships tend to be less independent as they grow older. They less likely to be employed. They're really, the guardianship we see from the research is it really can have a detrimental effect on the person unless they absolutely need it. And I'm not saying that nobody should have a guardianship, because there's absolutely people that need that kind of support and need someone to make these decisions. But you just need to be careful on who you're giving that to. I'll use my own life example. When my son turned 18, on his 18th birthday, he signed over a power of attorney and as well as a healthcare proxy to us. He's now 38, so for 20 years, we've been using those documents and we have never had an issue with anything. He still has full legal authority. He did, for example, he rented an apartment, a few years ago where he moved out into his own, and he's the guy that signed the lease because he has full legal authority. And, part of that is he has full legal authority and we have no responsibility as parents because he is a legal adult. Let me just stop and go through. Yes, Kate.
Well, so I think that we've been doing all of that. My son's recently turned 18 and he qualifies under the Rogers rule. And I think that when we made the decision to do guardianship, we did it simply because the second to last line you've got there, with the power of the attorney, the child must understand and sign the documents, and he doesn't have the ability to sign his name, and he doesn't, well, he probably does read, but he's not able to communicate it out. So, so we went for the guardianship, but with the understanding that, we love him and we care for him, and that if someday something amazing happens in autism research and they come up with a pill, we would obviously withdraw all of that. But my understanding is also that for the Rogers rule, you have to re-up the paperwork every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I think to consider for families is a guardianship doesn't have to be permanent, which you have illustrated, because a lot of kids, particularly if you have a developmental disability, by its own definition, it's going to take you longer in the development process. So you get some kids who at 18 clearly can't do this, but later on may be able to do that. So this is really a parental, best as parents, but my sort of talk here is just to understand that this does not always have to happen. Of course, there are circumstances where absolutely it must happen. But you really need to give this a lot of thought before you go ahead. I just want to bring up the issue that's come up before with signing. I just did a client. We just did a client who signed power of attorney and healthcare proxy. There is a provision under Massachusetts law. If you cannot sign, you can make a mark. For this particular client, we used a thumbprint, and the thumbprint is considered that mark under Massachusetts law. So we had the thumbprint, we had 2 witnesses and the notary, and that's valid in Massachusetts. So you don't have to physically be able to sign to do this, but you do have to know what you're doing. That's the biggest question which you raised, Kate, is the person who's signing over this power really needs to understand exactly what it is they're doing. If they can't understand that and they don't understand that, then that's when you need to go to guardianship. Because if they can't understand that fundamental piece, that's an issue. Any other questions or comments?
You said the power of attorney, you have to wait till they're 18, right?
Yes. They don't have, because they don't have legal authority to do anything until they're 18. And that's why you need to do it at 18. Yeah.
And
Oh,
this
hi,
is-
this is Joanne Ecker in Aquina, and my son is non-speaking autistic
Yeah.
too. And I think that, like, as we presume his competence is our number one thing that we work with Jacob, and he communicates via the letter board. So if he communicates through the letter board that he understands, then we can still do the thumbprint.
Yes, you're gonna, the challenge will be, is it has to be witnessed by a notary.
Uh-huh.
And so the notary has to be convinced that he understands what he's doing.
Okay. Yes.
But if he understands that, you can do that. That's not, there's no question that if he understands what he's doing and he understands that he can do it with whatever, if he can sign an X or whatever.
Right.
He can do it. That Massachusetts allows, what they call it, a mark. So if you're doing it under, just an X, he can just sign an X and that would be valid. But the critical piece is, does he understand what he's doing?
Right. And like I said, when you presume competence of non-speakers,
Mhm.
and they can communicate via the letter board, then I think that would be something that the notary would recognize.
Yes, absolutely. Because I've notarized these 2 and absolutely I would do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that, Joanne, because I also was, I come from that perspective of presuming competence and was curious about that. So thanks for asking that question.
You're welcome. We're on the same track.
Any other questions on this? Because this is kind of the meat of the turning 18. This is the biggest piece in the turning 18, I think.
Oh, I had another question just about this image we're looking at.
Yeah.
I don't know, bond required of agent. I don't know what that means.
Oh, bond says, so typically it would be parents, right, who are petition the court for guardianship for their child who's turning 18, who has a disability. What the court wants to know is that they're not going to steal all their money. So the bond is just like typically for a parent, it just says that they have to file a bond and they have to say, that we're giving this bond, but there's no surety on the bond, meaning they just sign the piece of paper and say, yep, we're going to be good with this. And the court's fine with that. You could get a case, like you can get these cases, like guardianship is the same thing you do with an adult who's never been disabled, but now for some reason is disabled. I had another case where a young woman was 35. She, like brilliant woman, researcher for the hospitals in Boston, had a brain surgery that was supposed to be routine, I guess, as routine as brain surgery is. She had she thought everything would be fine. The brain surgery went horribly wrong, and she ended up in a coma for 3 months. She never did a power of attorney to her husband. So he actually had to file for guardianship with the court to be able to access her records and to straighten out her insurance and the whole process. And I don't want to confuse matters, but she was the main breadwinner in the household and she had assets. We also had to file for a conservatorship, meaning someone to handle her money. The husband had to file that as well. I don't know if that answered your question. I think I went so far down a line, I forgot what your question was, Angela.
Just the bond required of agents.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
You
the
got it,
bond,
and then we
it, when you
manage.
have to have a lot of money, if you happen to have, you know, a person who's older may have houses and bank accounts. When you do that kind of bond, maybe the court would say, well, you need to go to a surety company, or you need to give your personal sureties, or whatever you have to do. But the court looks at it. And the point is just so you're not stealing the person's money. Any other questions or comments on that? Power of attorney, it gives the person full legal authority to act for that person that's given them the authority. Like for my son, I deal with Social Security Administration. I deal with, I can deal with his doctors. I have the power with, well, I'll go to the next one, I guess, which is probably healthcare proxy. The problem with healthcare proxy is, you all know, is that there's a HIPAA issue, that doctors are not allowed to disclose to people a person's medical conditions unless they have authority to do so. Once your kid turns 18, that doctor really, a lot of times they do, but they're not supposed to disclose anything to you once that happens, because they are now protected under the HIPAA law themselves. And then the other thing is medical decisions, is that you now have, if the child with a disability has signed this document over to you, it releases the doctor, and by the terms of the healthcare proxy itself, it gives them, the doctors, authority to talk to you about their medical condition. And it also gives you the power to help make decisions. And if they're unable to make a decision because of whatever happened, you'd be authorized to make any medical decisions for that person. Any questions on this?
Do you need a healthcare proxy if you have a guardianship?
No.
Okay.
That's a great question. You do not need it. You have the power to act as that person when you're the guardian.
Okay.
So I appreciate that, because that's a major point I should have made.
No,
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
sort of did. I just wanted to make sure I had understood it correctly.
Yeah.
But with guardianship, there are options to do bits and pieces. It doesn't have to be everything, correct?
Right. And the forms now in Massachusetts have that. So the judge has the authority to do that. They're not as aggressive. The judges are not as aggressive in doing that than I think they, I don't know. I come from a sort of a civil liberties standpoint, and my viewpoint in the world and disability is that. And my experience is that nobody is that aggressive in carving these things out, typically. It's on the forms in Massachusetts, so it's the ability to do it is just check a bunch of boxes. I think when parents file, they can check the boxes that they think the kid doesn't need, or has the right to make decisions like where they're going to live or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head what they all are. But that there is that ability to carve it out under Massachusetts law.
And Tom, what happens when the guardian dies?
So what happens is that the new guardian has to be appointed, and they go through the same process as if you're starting over again. Typically, the court would look at who wants to be guardian, because that's a big thing, is typically nobody wants to be guardian. So if a family member steps forward and say, I want to be guardian for this person, I think the court's going to absolutely love it, because there's a real shortage of guardians. So it would be more routine, like if a spouse or a former spouse or a sibling was going to come up and say, oh, yep, I'm ready to do this, the court would be thrilled. But it is paperwork and all that has to be done.
So you just redo it all when.
You have to redo it, because what happened is the courts want to see the clinical team report and everything again. I think that's the way I'm trying to think. I did one. I think we were trying to release one of the guardians. I had the mom was the guardian for well, an adult with a disability. And mom just couldn't handle it anymore. The person with the disability had like a fetal alcohol syndrome. So she needed lots and lots of support and care and medical stuff. And there was a lot of stuff going on for this person. And mom was like getting older and she just said, I can't handle this anymore. So she was resigning from the guardianship. When she was resigning from the guardianship, the court required us to file everything, to do everything all over again. And I kind of expect if you were changing guardians, I think they may want to sort of to go through that process again. Yeah. Because they're just trying to be careful that they're doing the right thing. Any other questions on that? The healthcare is another thing. Insurance is, you know, most people know that if a child, once a child turns 18, actually now under federal law, you have until 26 that the kid can be carried on your health insurance. If your kid has a disability, you can typically file paperwork with your insurance company and they can be carried on. My son is still carried on my insurance, and he's 38. So typically you're just filling out forms saying this kid has a disability, blah, blah, blah. And you can get that, you know, really for as long as you want. You just have to prove that your kid has a disability and that's why they should be included on your health insurance. The other, you know, the big thing is mass health, right? And depending on the kid's disability, some kids with significant disabilities may already be on mass health even before they turn 18, but clearly after 18, if they don't have the income, they need to be on mass health. And that's a pretty, you know, obviously Massachusetts is really good about that. They're one of the great states for that mass health is Medicaid. There's a lot of states that make all this stuff very, very difficult for everybody. Massachusetts is really good. And then, as you know, mass health, with mass health, you can get personal care attendants as well, depending on your disability. Go ahead.
Can your child at 18 go on mass health and also be on your insurance?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to talk about that a little bit. This is a little bit. So if you already have health insurance, your kid turns 18, has a disability, would be eligible for mass health. Typically what happens if they apply for a supplemental security income, if you get supplemental security income, if you're approved, and I'm going to get to what that is later, but if the kid's approved, you automatically enrolled in mass health, which is one of the good things of sort of going through the system. There is something else I want to talk about guardianship, is that if your kids turned 18, they now have mass health. They're going to get personal care attendant hours. If you're the guardian, you can't be the person that's giving them that stuff. You know, so a lot of times if I have a married couple, one spouse is going to be the guardian if the kid needs a guardianship, and the other spouse is not guardian. And that's so that person can get paid for by mass health to do some care for the kid. We're kind of going deep into this stuff, I know, but
Is that the adult foster care model? Is that what you're talking about?
no, it's not even that. It's more
not-
like personal care attendants. It's like someone to
Okay.
just take care of the
Okay.
person when they need help, you know? Yeah. Oh, and then I have the parents' health insurance. Any other questions on that before I move on to something else?
I actually have one more question. When
Yeah.
if your child is in a residential program, you don't qualify for any of that PCA stuff until they move out of the residential program, right? Even if they come home on weekends, is that correct?
I'm not sure about that. I actually think that you can.
Okay,
I think you can for that.
okay, thank you.
And then I'm not sure if I have Diamond Ellie Vanderhoop. I don't know if she was asking a question or not.
I think she
No,
had her grandchild there too. I
Oh,
think
okay.
that's what you heard.
Yeah, all right.
um,
Okay. Education and employment. You probably all know this, but you're right. You're entitled to an education until you turn 22. And so let me just move my. So unless you pass MCAS and graduate, the school district still has a responsibility for educating your child. That doesn't mean that they have to do it, but they are financially responsible to do that. It's also true, which probably some of you already know, that even if your child passes MCAS, and we particularly see this around kids on the spectrum, where they're able to pass MCAS, they're doing well academically, but they may need a lot of different kinds of support. Those kids, even if they have graduated, can still be able and eligible for those other supports that are needed by the school district where they live. The other piece, post-secondary education options, we just, a new law was passed in Massachusetts. Some of you may have heard of the MACI program, where students with intellectual or developmental disabilities attend Massachusetts public colleges and universities. That has been greatly expanded as of last summer, where any student now with an intellectual or developmental disability that was not able to pass MCAS because of their disability now has the opportunity to enroll in any Massachusetts public college and university. So that's all the community colleges, all the state universities, and the UMass system. Do you have a question, Angela?
sorry, I was just waving to someone, but I will
Oh.
say for our community of the islands that I did visit Cape Cod Community College and their MACI program, and they also have Project Forward.
Right.
But it just really seemed amazing, and there can be a lot of one-on-one supports. It just, if you have any interest, it's really worth checking out. It's very amazing.
And that's my area of research, my primary area of research. And we know that anyone who goes through those programs is more likely to be employed, make more money, be less reliant on government benefits, as well as work in jobs that are not typically reserved for someone with an intellectual or developmental disability, which usually, I don't even know what, there's a reference about like food, flowers, and something else, but it's like they're getting jobs that are very different because they have this education process. When I was at the State House, there was 2 aides for elected officials who had intellectual disabilities who are now working in the capacity to support elected officials in Massachusetts. So, and that's not a job that people typically thought of for someone with an intellectual disability, but it's opening up doors that, and just like college does for everybody else, all the research says, if you've been to college, you're, more stable, you're, all those, you're going to make more money, you're more likely to be employed, you're, less likely to be unemployed and all that. That applies to students with intellectual or developmental disabilities as well, as it refers to post-secondary education. There's also mass rehab. I don't know if any of you have taken advantage of that. I have personally found mass rehab difficult to use, particularly around the area of if you have an intellectual disability. I think a lot of it, what has happened is that in Massachusetts, the Department of Developmental Services has taken that up, which is in the notes here as DDS. But there are programs that were offered through mass rehab to educate folks and help them get jobs as well. Any questions before I go to the next slide.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And maybe this is DDS and I don't know because it's service coordinators, but when people aren't quite in the space of having a competitive wage job, which is the goal of Mass Rehab, then it falls on DDS really to try and help create like volunteer opportunities, things like that. Is that correct? Is that
Well,
how you understand it?
No, DDS can actually provide support for employment. They can provide job coaches. They can do all sorts of stuff. The only thing is that you need, if in adult services, you have, if you have a kid with a disability, you know what a IEP meeting is. As an adult, they have an ISP meeting. In that meeting, one of your goals needs to be employment. If it's not a goal in the ISP, nobody's working on it. But if it is, they're supposed to work on it to get that person employed. And it would surround everything else, like the kid that needs training or whatever, and job coach, all that would be provided by DDS.
Thank you.
And can you access Mass Rehab and DDS? Somebody was telling me that the other day, or
You can,
okay.
but if you're qualifying under DDS, it's like, I don't, I just have
worth
not
it.
found Mass
Yeah.
Rehab very user friendly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're supposed to actually, if you look at the Macy program and the new law concerning post-secondary education, the law itself provides provisions for Mass Rehab and DDS to provide support and to provide financial support to make this successful. So it's, hopefully we'll see, one of the goals of this, they need to work together better. And maybe this can happen. I've done research on Mass Rehab in Massachusetts and how it serves individuals with intellectual disabilities, and it's like embarrassing. It's so bad. The numbers are just minuscule, and I think the reason is that Massachusetts tends to push everything over to DDS, but absolutely you can use the two in conjunction with each other. Any other questions? Housing and living.
Yeah, no, I want to just, I have Diamond here. I'm Diamond's mother.
Okay.
And the problems we've had once she went into a program that evolved into a contractor coming to Martha's Vineyard. And she was a case with DDS and trying to get support, getting employment through Mass Rehab. All your caution is I'll substantiate. It's Diamond worked with Chillmark Chocolates, for all her adult life. She's 50 now. Chillmark Chocolates stopped. They retired.
Yeah.
And now she's looking for employment, and she can't really get support anywhere. And back when she was 22, 23, 24, 25, so that's 25 years ago, it was happening, but now they just want to pigeonhole her into a DDS supported service where she's sitting around every day, and she's not interested, and she will find a job, but I don't know how it's going for the kids in transition, and you're not making me feel like it's any different for them. Okay, I mean,
It's
I don't know.
not.
I mean,
But I
I
think
don't know if there's an answer there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the big thing is, though, for you is to make it clear to DDS that they need to step up to the plate, and this is a major goal for her. That's what should happen. There's another, there's also a way, and it could be challenging, but maybe on the vineyard, it might be a good alternative. You can actually take over the money for her that she's allotted by DDS. And you could go out and buy your own or pay for your own people to provide her job support. If that's a possibility, that's something you could raise with with her service coordinator at DDS. But clearly you should be saying that a goal for her is employment. That's what she wants to do. That's what you wanted to do. Just be very clear that they should be doing that.
There you go. How do you like that? Thank you.
Okay.
Yay!
Are ISP meetings annual the way?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They're
Thank you.
just like an IEP meeting, only for adult stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
We're talking about living arrangements now. One of the things that I think is I recommend for any person with a disability turning 18 is to apply for a Section 8 housing voucher. What you would apply, I guess, I don't know how, I think the island has, do they have one housing authority or they have?
You actually apply for Section 8 through HAC, which is in Hyannis.
Okay.
But Angela got me the application and it was really easy. And I would recommend that everybody on this call do it. It took me about 10 minutes to fill it out. And the only roadblock I had was they sent me back a note and said, "Are you allowed to sign for your son?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I don't have guardianship quite yet. So I think I have to send them proof that I have guardianship once I have it."
Okay. So that's I would just say this is the gold standard. And I'm going to walk through a financial plan for an individual with a significant disability that needs these supports without their own money. And I'll walk through and you'll see how important that is. There's also federal and state housing programs. I don't know of any federal housing program on the island, but there would be state housing programs like individual town, like the one that's on Vineyard Haven Edgartown Road. That would be a state housing program with that. I forget what they call it, something village.
Hillside?
Yeah. So that's an example of a state housing program. Shared living is a model that's now used by DDS, Department of Developmental Services. Essentially, shared living is the person with a disability lives with a family. And that family provides support for that individual. Group homes are another area where Department of Developmental Services would pay typically a subcontractor to run a house for people with disabilities and staff it and all that. Supported living and independent living are a person is living on their own and gets supports put in. And I'll use my own son as an example. He lives in his own apartment, and then he has, right now he only has 10 hours of support from a person who comes in and they go out to coffee. She helps him with his shopping. She'll bring him to doctor's appointments and all that. So that's all done. And then in addition to that, he also has a day program where he goes every day, and not every day, he goes like 2 or 3 days a week. But it's just part of putting services together to serve his needs and what he wants. I'm pausing again.
I'm just going to throw it out there too, that Hillside Village individuals have the ability to apply for a 2-bedroom to have that PCA live with them. So that's an option here.
So even under the Section 8 certificate, that's falling under the American with Disabilities Act. If say I apply for a Section 8 and they give me a voucher, the certificate that says I can get a 1-bedroom apartment. But suppose I'm in a wheelchair, or I have some intellectual disability where I need support all the time and I need that person to live in. I can then say, well, in order for me to live independently, I need someone else to help me out. So I need that other bedroom. So that would be true on any housing. That it's not just Hillside Village, it's anything, because the Americans with Disabilities Act says that this person needs to have the same access to everything that everybody else does. And if they need that kind of support, then they should get that kind of support. They're required to do that.
Tom, can I ask a question, which maybe there's a longer answer and maybe I have to like employ you to answer some of my questions or send you an email. But so I have a son with nonverbal autism who needs pretty much 24-hour care.
Mhm.
I'm also the executive director of the Island Autism Center, and we're building 4-bedroom, what we call intensive need houses that are essentially like group homes, but our mission is to house islanders first. So they aren't group homes, they're supported living situations. And in conversations that I've had with DDS, they've said, well, we'll give you 30 hours of service, but nobody can have 24/7 care and choose where they live, which strikes me as gotta be.
Say that again.
gotta-
Nobody. Oh, no.
So essentially what they're saying is you can't form your own group home where you choose your roommates and have 24, because it costs about something in the range of $200,000 a year to put somebody in a group home. And so what we were suggesting was that they give us $150,000 a year for each person in this 4-bedroom. And they just say that either you have to go to the group home or you can't apply for that much financial aid.
Okay, so there is something called the Real Lives Law.
Yes,
You ever hear that?
I did.
Right now, DDS was supposed to issue regulations about, I don't know how many years, a lot of years ago.
8 years ago.
Right. So
Yeah.
they just did it. They had a hearing. I testified at the hearing. I was the author of the law. So I know
Okay.
what it's supposed to do and what it does. What it's supposed to do is exactly what you're trying to do. So
Yeah.
let me be clear. That's what the law is supposed to do. They issued these draft regulations, or they haven't. Oh, they did issue the draft regulations. The draft regulations are horrible. I testified. Jane Ryder, who's the commissioner, reached out to me like a week ago and said she wants to have a conversation with me. We haven't got together yet, but absolutely,
Okay.
you should be pushing that. That's what the law is supposed to do, is exactly what you're asking for.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Thank you. And one other question. So if you're in a Section 8 and it's a 4-bedroom, can each person have Section 8, or does one person have to be sort of the head of the household? How does that work?
No, everybody could be Section 8.
Okay. Okay.
My son initially, he got his Section 8 certificate when he was about 21. And the group home actually used his Section 8 certificate while he was living in the group home. So the provider used his Section 8 certificate to pay for his rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why everybody should be applying for a Section 8 certificate. There's no question that's, it's the magic ticket. And another example is my son lived in a group home that was sponsored by DDS for a number of years. And then he decided he didn't want to live there anymore, that he wanted to live in his own apartment. I called DDS and I said, look, he wants to live in his own apartment. And they said, well, we can't do that. And then I said, oh, but he has a Section 8 certificate. And they said, oh, then we can do that. That's like the magic sauce that makes everything happen. because
Right.
DDS doesn't want to pay. The DDS is probably saving, you're using the number 200,000. They're saving like $100,000 probably by us and him living on his own. With 10 hours of support, that's very different than what they were providing before.
Exactly. Yeah. And is there any project Section 8 money in Massachusetts right now or not really?
I don't know about that. I know there's individual, some housing authorities provide, I know Framingham provides this program where you can use your Section 8 certificate to pay for buy a condo or something, and that you can use their Section 8, instead of paying rent, it'll allow you to pay the mortgage. So it's possible to pull things together like, I
Oh,
forget what it's called. There's a program in Massachusetts for affordable housing. Like if
Yeah.
you're a first-time home buyer and all that kind of thing, you can
Yeah.
start piecing things together and then jump in with your Section 8 certificate to pay
Okay.
the mortgage. So you can get down payment from I can't think of the name of the program, but you can get like reduced mortgage, the whole thing, and then you can jump in the final thing and say, oh, and here's my Section 8 certificate. That's how I'm paying the mortgage. So that's another option.
I'm taking up way too much of everybody's
All
time.
right. But anyway,
I'm going to send you an email.
all right. What's the, how am I doing for time? I'm over.
This one's like a 60 to 90 minute meeting. So,
Okay.
we sort of go where it takes us.
Okay. So the next thing, oops, I hit two things at once. Community and social life obviously is critically important. One of the things that the research says that adults with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities who live on their own, the number one issue is loneliness, that these connections are critically important to this process. And that needs to be laid out in the ISP meeting if they're being served by DDS or whatever it is, but it's really critical that piece be built, because that's where the big problem is. Financial planning. I did it for you folks, right? Yeah, I did. About special needs trusts and about wills and all that. Financial planning from the parents' perspective, you need to make sure you get all your stuff, all your ducks in a row for that. Actually, this website, when you get it, this is a nonprofit organization, Special Needs Trust Online, where you can get those documents at a substantially reduced rate. And that'll be on the thing that comes out. And that's what I'm actually the founder of that organization. So that's why I know about that organization. But that's important to do that. Actually, this link is live and it brings you to that site. The next thing that you need to do is apply for supplemental security income when your child's turning 18. Absolutely, that's critical. If your child has enough quarters, they can have SSDI. I don't remember what the number is, but it's less when they're applying to that they could possibly qualify for SSDI. Mass Health, we talked about. SNAP is another program, which is formerly known as food stamps. During the COVID emergency, SNAP, I think, has been paying $250 a month for food stamps. And I think we're all familiar with that. If not, what the SNAP program does, it gives you if you're in financial need, it has nothing to do with disability, but since a lot of folks with disabilities are in financial need, you get a card that looks like a credit card and you can use it to buy food items. And you just use that, but it just varies. Right now, under the COVID emergency, the money is great and it's great for a person to do that. There's also discount programs for phone and internet that are offered. I don't have the information in front of me, but like Verizon and all those companies offer a discounted phone program or discounted internet program. They'll actually even give you a smartphone if you apply for it, but you only get one or the other. And the smartphone they give you and the service they have is I'd say subpar at best. But you can then use the program for a home internet if that's what you're going to do. And the home internet program is actually just reduced price. You still have to pay something for it. SSI in this year, SSI, if you live on your own and you qualify for SSI, that payment is $934 a month in Massachusetts, which is a good chunk of money. And then, like I said before, if you make it with SSI, you're automatically enrolled in Medicaid in Massachusetts. That's Mass Health, which is a great thing. Oh, you know what? You had asked about both insurances. I didn't answer that question, did I? So both insurances, what can happen is if you have your insurance in Mass Health, what happens is that your own insurance company pays first and then Mass Health pays. But if you're paying for your own insurance or you're providing your own insurance and Mass Health is secondary, there's a program that you can go in and get money back from Mass Health to pay for your premium that you're paying for if your kid has both of those things. And you can just go on the Mass Health website, and I forgot the name of it. It's like, I don't know. If you just Google primary health insurance or something in Mass Health, you should be able to find it. This is a budget, and I want to this is how things can fit together. Particularly, Kate, when you're looking at this and you're looking at how do I support these 4 people in a house, what does that look like? First, SSI, each person would be getting about $940. Presently under SNAP, they're getting $250 to go towards food. So that brings an income of each person at $1,190. The expenses, oh, let's see. Somehow we screwed this up. That first, oh, I see the numbers are not lined up. That's what happened. Sorry for that. This is expenses. So rent, Section 8 rent would be approximately $200, right? So if you had 4 people with Section 8 certificates, and the rent, so let me calculate this out. I'm going to use very rough figures.
I'm sorry, can I add, so the 140 that's there is what the 4.
That
what
was supposed, the
person
numbers
is
is supposed to be
respons-
down one. So 140 was internet and cable.
Okay, so the $200, right, that would be rent and expense would be,
Rent
Rent.
and utilities.
and then Section 8 pays it up to market rate. Is that correct?
There's
So-
limitations, but that's exactly what it does.
Okay,
And in like the Framingham area, I know the rent, I don't know what it is, right? I didn't look this year, but it's approximately $1,900 for a 1-bedroom apartment.
wow.
So I would expect that the Vineyard is going to be somewhat around that figure because they max out pretty close to that. They don't get much higher than that, but you'd still get that. So for each individual person, if they had Section 8 certificates, you can really put together a package to make it work.
Yeah,
So 4 people in a house,
Yeah.
the side would be $900 a month. The food stamp potentially be $200 a month for food. And then if they get Section 8 certificate for the housing. That's what he's thinking.
So what happens is you end up with, these are all the expenses, like so healthcare is $0. Cell phone could be, and that's market rate. Actually, you can get a cell phone at market rate or a service for $50 or less now. Internet and cable, that's where the 140 was supposed to be, and the Section 8 rent and utilities was supposed to be in the $200. Support services would be provided by DDS if the person qualifies under DDS, and healthcare is provided by Mass Health. So all total, you end up with each individual having this excess of $800 for other expenses each month. So the money can work out very well. I think a lot of people have this conception that I have to have money, I have to buy the house, I have to buy the services and do all this. it's possible to use government benefits to get all this to work that way. I'll pause for a second on that.
So in the 200 that's there, that the person has to pay out of there, that is essentially supposed to come out of their Social Security, right? Is that?
Yeah, it has
Right,
to come
yeah.
out of their money. You
Yeah,
can't, the other thing is you can't be adding money in. Like if their income is SSI, right? You
Yeah.
can't beef up their income. That's not something you can do. Like if
But-
you beef up their income by giving them money every month, it screws up the way the Section
Right.
8 calculates rent.
so then how do you access money that's in either an Able's account or, well, the Able's account is their money, right?
Right, so you can access that.
So you could
right.
access that, and if you had a balance of 800 every month, when you got up to 2,000, you would want to move it into the Able's account, right? Because otherwise
Exactly.
you would mess with their, what about a special needs trust? So if you have a special needs trust and say it has, like, for example, my son has a special needs trust that was his 529 account.
Right,
that we started for him when he was a baby. So now he has a special needs trust that has, money to send him to college, but he's not going to college. So how does that gets used for like big budget? Like if he wanted to buy a car, which he doesn't, but if he did, that would come out of a special needs trust. Is that right?
yes, yes. The special needs trust is the way the special needs trust works is government benefits pay first, the trust pays second.
Okay. So if he suddenly had some problem where his rent was over what he had for some reason, his special needs trust could actually pay his rent because it's
Or his
his
ABLE account.
or his
yeah.
ABLE account.
He should be
Okay.
able to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Because I think this is eye-opening for a lot of families when they see these numbers played out. Then this is create the special needs trust. The ABLE account, like we've been talking about, the ABLE account is an account. It actually is ABLE accounts are 529 accounts. They come under the same classifications, but the ABLE account allows someone to shelter money for and still collect SSI up to 100,000, and a person can put, or any people, 17,000 can be deposited in the ABLE account in any given year. And the ABLE account does have a Medicaid payback requirement, so that if the person passes away and they still have money in their ABLE account, Medicaid comes in, or Mass Health would come in and say, I want my money back that I paid to support this person. So that's different than the special needs trust. Special needs trust would not have that clawback. It's Massachusetts courts have ruled that that's not valid, that Massachusetts can't claw back out of a special needs trust, but they can out of an ABLE account.
So what happens to a special needs when a person with a disability dies, their special needs trust goes to their immediate family? Is that what
It would be spelled out in the trust itself on where it
Okay.
goes.
Okay.
If you use the special needs trust online, it goes to the estate of that person. So if they had a will, it would go under the will. If it doesn't, it goes under, it is a law, it's called the law of intestacy, which says, if you don't have a will, this is where your money goes. Typically it goes to, like if a kid dies with parents, it goes, well, if the person dies with kids, it goes to the kids. Or it goes to the spouse, then the kids. And then if there's no spouse, no kids, it goes to the parents next. And I think if there's no parent, it goes to the brothers and sisters.
Gotcha.
And this is a live link too. So if you want to set up an ABLE account, you just click on that link. It's super easy to do. You can do it online. It takes probably like 5 minutes to create the ABLE account. And then it can be used in all these ways we're talking about. I know we're kind of, this is another thing that you should be doing, which is the letter of intent. And that's like a blueprint for your person with a disability, that like what your vision is for them, what their vision is for them, what kind of support they need, who their doctors are, who their friends are, who their, people they rely on, and all their contact information. So if you're going to suddenly die or be out of the picture, someone has this like instruction manual on how to make this person's life the way it should be. This is a live link to, that's a free document you can get from the Special Needs Trust online. So again, let's see what else I got. Oh, and DDS, I just wanted to go through this briefly. It's going to actually, so DDS, if you're eligible for DDS, you think you may be eligible, you got to let your school district know early on so they can start transitioning for this. Typically in Massachusetts, you become eligible for DDS at the age of 22. When you age out of the public school system, how they do it, if anybody, I'm sure some of you have been involved in this, they do this evaluation that's they call it a Massachusetts MASCAP, where they send you like this long list of, can the person brush their teeth independently? Can they shower independently? Can they get up independently? All the things, can they do these things? And then from that information, they understand what that person needs, and then how they do it they call it a class of turning 22. So they take all the people that are turning 22 in the state, they take all those evaluations, they figure how much each person needs, and then they divide up the money that the legislature gives them for that turning 22. It's kind of a barbaric way to do things, but that's what they do. I guess the only advice I can give you is, if you're doing the MASCAP or you're doing that evaluation, don't make your kids sound like a superstar. Be honest and truthful, but don't make sure you're being clear on what that person really needs.
And that amount of money that they award the kid when they turn 22 never changes, right? It's always, isn't it always? I mean, it changes if there's a percentage increase, but basically if you're in a year where they have not a lot of money, you get less than somebody who might the year before you have been in.
Oh, yeah. But it moves around. It doesn't stay with the person like that.
Oh, okay.
It's not supposed to stay that. It should be, if there's a change in circumstances, like you get people that may have more disability, and like my son, right? He's all of a sudden DDS got this windfall when he moved into his own apartment. So it's like, we didn't get that money, so that's going somewhere. It's more fluid than you would think. And then a lot of times I get people that say they turn 22 and they say, oh, we can't get residential placement. Some people need a residential placement, and they'll say, well, we didn't get it. That doesn't mean you're never going to get it. You got to stay on DDS and keep hounding them for that. So don't think that it's one and done. This is an evolving process. Go ahead.
But you didn't have DDS in the spreadsheet that you just showed us before, right?
What I did, they showed up actually as a 0. I said supports.
Okay.
So the supports can be provided either by Mass Health or by DDS, or whatever, but that, what's supporting the person can be DDS services, right? So it's, if suppose you have a day program and you're going 5 days a week, right? That the person that we're talking about with that financial spreadsheet, they're going somewhere 5 days a week, they're getting all these support services, but they don't pay for that. DDS pays for it, right? That's why it was a 0 on the spreadsheet.
Okay.
And that's it. Any questions? I think, do you have a question, Ellie?
No, that was a great presentation. That was so helpful.
Good.
Yeah. A lot of, how old is your a family member? Your son?
He's
Yeah.
he's 38. He did work for Chilmark Chocolate as well for a summer. So yeah, I'm
Oh,
familiar with that.
okay.
Yeah, he worked there. It was a long time ago he worked there. He worked there, I think it was like 2003.
Yeah, well,
Worked there.
yeah, she was working there 2003. She,
Yeah.
absolutely. But he ought to reconnect because they're
Yeah.
great. They've got a great program called Vineyard Independence Partners.
Oh, I
That-
think yeah. And Michael's doing work on that. Is that his name, Michael?
Yeah, he's the new,
Yeah.
he's right. So you get it.
Yeah.
They're going to live forever, and they are going to have fun. It's
Good.
great. Yeah.
Good.
So
Sounds great.
well, it's all part of the big picture. It's not on your list, but having, right, you said social was a big part
Right,
of it.
right.
We don't want to be, it's hard for them to initiate kind of their
Right.
fun. But, Diamond's got friends that she worked with at Chilmark Chocolates, and they all laugh a lot, and they're going bowling on Saturday. There you go. Right.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
perfect. What?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Thanks for this evening.
Great.
Be wet.
Yeah, this was really wonderful. Thank you, Tom. I am going to be emailing you. And
And I'll
thank
pull
thank
together
you,
my notes.
Angela, very much too. Thank you so much for this. This has been really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I will say that, the feedback's been that you're just so much easier to understand than so many of the talks that have happened.
Well, we had this one guy who we used to get all the time to do sort of legal special needs trust stuff. And basically he would say, I can't really tell you that because I'm not your lawyer, but you're welcome to call me. And then,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, no, I'm where you guys are and were, that's where I am. So it's easy for me to know what's happening.
Well, we really, really appreciate it.
We
Right?
sure do. And I really appreciate your time and all your wisdom. And I will do my best once you send me that slideshow from today. I'll send that out with some of the links and resources.
Great. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. I enjoy doing these as well. And I think that, it's not really complicated, but someone needs to tell people this is what you do and this is how it works.
Yeah,
I
it
wanna-
always is presented as being more complicated than it actually is,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I want to add that Kate was at a meeting earlier that I got the second half of, that meetings about group homes. There's another initiative going on Martha's Vineyard, and it seems like there's so many things happening that we need all of them. But what happened to the Disability Coalition that, to get us coordinated a little bit? Is that something that disappeared?
I
So
don't
I
know.
was-
Roxanne.
I was involved in the kickoff that we did on top of the bowling alley. I don't know if you were there for that. So I was involved, and they actually, I think they contracted with an agency in Rhode Island to sort of do the research and get it together. But after that, I really wasn't involved. So I know there's an effort to do that. I'm not sure what's happening with it is all.
And there is a new person stepping into the role of coordinator for the IDC. So I think you will see more activity. I mean, they still have quarterly meetings and there is momentum, but bigger momentum should be happening soon.
Great.
Okay, so tonight, to just let Kate know, who's worked so hard on trying, the autism center, that they want to hire, a consultant.
It's okay, Roxanne, we're talking about two completely different groups of people, I think. I'm really talking about people who need pretty high levels of care and people who are interested in working with other people with disabilities. And they're really talking about something which is a whole nother conversation, which is people who have disabilities that are something that is, I hate to put people at different levels and things like that, but people who are out there who have jobs, who are pretty independent and don't really want to be put in these disability communities. And, I think it's different for every person is different, and
Right.
every person needs a different level of hands-on. With my son, they used to call it a full prompt or a partial prompt, right? Everybody needs something that's different. So I
Yeah.
think it's totally fine that they're looking at another option, because other options are always, what we want is to have so many options that we don't know which one to choose, right? I mean, that would be the ideal world. Yeah. Tom, I would love to have you look at our website though. And when you're next on island, we'd love to show you what we've got going on. Do you guys-
Awesome. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Bye, everybody. I'll send you the PowerPoint.
Excellent. Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank you.
Have a-
Thanks, Angela.
Bye.